You are now in the Reality Capture Network.
Welcome to the Reality Capture Network. Today we're excited to get in and talk a little bit about architecture, technology, and we are excited to introduce and welcome Christie to join us. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, you're welcome.
So before we dig into too deep into technology or industry, we really like to just introduce our guest and let them tell us a little bit of their background story, so that those listeners and our followers can kind of get to know who you are and where'd you grow up and what got you into the industry you're in.
So I've been in the industry about 18 years now. I had a cousin that was older than me when I was younger, and she started taking architecture and interior design courses, and that's really what started it for me. At a young age, I wanted to be an architect, and that example that she kind of laid before me really got me excited about what that might look like. And so right away, 18, I knew what I wanted to do, went to college, got my degree in interior architecture, but I started working as I could, worked for firms from the early 2000s really on up to now, and spent the bulk of my career at a large international firm, about 10 years. And that really expanded my career and my knowledge. I got to work on projects overseas, got to work on ground up projects, 500,000 square feet. And really that was what gave me the foundation for my education, because work experience does a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I learned in school, went to Cal State Long Beach. So I grew up in California kid. And so Cal State Long Beach just happened to have one of the best interior architecture programs around. I was really blessed and lucky to go there. And then from there, I met one of my professors who was working at the large firm. And that's really how I got into that firm and got a lot of my experience. But I got burnt out.
Yeah.
I got really burnt out and went through the whole 2008, 2009 situation, survived that, was able to come back to work after, they paused everybody's position for almost 6 months to a year. And after that, I really started to rethink what I wanted to pursue in the architecture world and what my passion was from the beginning. And it wasn't just architecture, it was using that knowledge and information to help other people. And I started to try to do that on the side. So I'd volunteer profits. I would go out after disasters struck and help rebuild, but I just never had enough time to dedicate to it. And I was continuing to get more and more burnt out. And about 4 years ago, I had to really think about what I wanted to do with my career, and had an opportunity to fly basically to Seattle and take a position over there for a large firm, larger than the one I was at. And I was just thinking that would probably prohibit me to further help others with the knowledge that I had gained. So I decided to go to a small company instead, but that small company also made me very exhausted. I was same hours, and I really wasn't gaining any knowledge. I kind of had the right people around me that were still mentoring me. So I felt like if I was going to take a leap so that I could dedicate more time to helping others, that was the time to go. So after being there for about 2 years, I decided to start my own firm. And the main goal with that was to dedicate at least 20% of our work to nonprofits. And it was just knowing that a lot of small companies and a lot of nonprofits don't have the understanding that they need in the architecture realm. They don't know how to rent buildings, buy buildings. They don't know how to renovate them, and they can't usually afford to hire someone that's skilled to assist them. And so with that knowledge, that's what really started the concept of, okay, maybe I just take a leap of faith. So I did. I started my company, and we do dedicate about 20% of our work to nonprofits. And we, in that process, I started the nonprofit itself. So I also have a nonprofit, 19 for Humanity. And the goal with that is the same. We basically want to take the skills that we've learned over the 20 years or so that my team has been in the industry and help people that can't afford skilled architects, designers, contractors, and really take the resources that they have and utilize them to the most, or in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah.
So that's really where I'm at now, and just really have had a passion for helping others. And the goal really is to build things that help other people. So orphanages, shelters, homes. It's really not to build things that wouldn't be helpful to others.
Nice.
It's really to contribute to things that really do have an impact on the local community. So that's why I started the company. And I have had more free time to do things for others, which is not something I thought.
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine I would have more free time starting my own company than working for one. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Is so the nonprofit and the work you guys are doing there, is it local? Is it out of the country? Is it both? What's your kind of focus?
It's both. I've been on the board for a nonprofit called Frontline Missions. And when I took the leap of faith, they had wanted to build a 22-acre missionary campus in Mexico, in Santo Tomas. So that's actually something that we're actively working on. We've also been talking to people that we work with in Haiti and other areas all over the world about partnering up on builds or just helping with resources. Mm-hmm. But then we also do work. So this year we're working on a home in Colton, and it started with redoing a kid's bedroom that was in need. But when we got to the home, the rest of the family really had a strong need for us to come in and help them. So we're actually going to redo the entire home, and we're going to partner with Frontline Missions on that. So we do that. And then we also work with Fred Jordan Missions and women's shelters here locally that we go in, and we either take donated items that we collect and give them a purpose, or we'll go in and help remodel spaces that need it. But we also collect materials from job sites. So furniture, finishes, fabric, and then we use and repurpose them for these other nonprofits as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great drive behind how you can use your resources and a company you get to grow. And that's one of the best things, one of the things I enjoyed most as well about starting a company is you get to decide, you get to decide that you're going to dedicate resources or time to helping other people, or how you treat your employees, or anything to do with that process, and it allows somebody who has a passion for helping others to do so. So that's incredible, and we'll make sure that I know after this we'll give some links to your website, but we'd love to throw in your nonprofit and try to connect people with you as well.
That'd be awesome.
So regarding your other services on the architectural side, I notice you are in Irvine. Is that correct?
Yes, we actually share an office in Irvine, and then we are just about to finish construction on our office in Anaheim. So we're actually going to move our headquarters to Anaheim so we can be more central to LA, San Bernardino, and Orange County. But we will keep the Irvine location and continue sharing there as well.
Okay.
So steadily.
Yeah, awesome.
So we'd grown out of our space in Irvine. So
that's great. Well, that's awesome. I actually saw some of your posts on social media about your new office space. So that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So as far as projects and kind of coverage as far as your projects go, how far out do you guys expand?
In terms of where we do
geographically,
our projects?
Yeah.
So for commercial projects, we work all over United States. So we've completed, I want to say, about 300,000 square feet in Texas. We've been working on projects in Boston, and then we've been in the works on projects further on the East Coast. The bulk of our work is still in California, but a lot of our clients that we've been working with for quite some time are international. And so we've been working with them as needed in other states and overseas as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really been a blessing.
That's awesome. So getting into some technology discussion, that's kind of a focus for some of our network here, is talking about new technologies and how they apply to different industries. A big part of that being within construction, within architecture, within engineering. And some of those technologies would be 3D laser scanners that are used for mapping out spaces, drones that are for capturing overall sites, talking about 3D modeling and taking that into virtual reality. So I'd love to kind of touch base, even if it's just lightly, on maybe each of those technologies and just hear, which ones have you guys seen or used? So let's start with laser scanning. Are you familiar with what 3D laser scanning is?
Yeah. When I was at the global firm, they had started to utilize that, and that was kind of early in its development. But it is an expensive technology, and there are a lot of technologies that try to be what it is. And so you really have to have the money to invest in the more expensive option. And we want to get to a point of doing that because it does make things a lot more efficient when you're trying to understand a building and you're going in really with no visibility as to what's behind the walls, what's in the foundation. And so there are times when some of our subcontractors, engineers will use it, and we're trying to investigate parts of the property. But that is a goal for us, just not something that I'm able to do at this moment.
Yeah.
But I have used past, and it's very efficient, and it really does help us understand buildings a lot more.
Yeah. So do you, as far as project types, just so I could think of maybe certain question to ask, do you do a lot of ground up new projects? Do you work on renovations and expansions of existing buildings? What's kind of the mix?
Pretty much everything. So for instance, the missionary campus is all ground up. So that will be something that we do to the standards of, United States out there in Mexico. We also work on renovations, expansions to existing core and shell commercial buildings. And we do have some residential, although it's a very small percentage of the overall square footage that we work on. The bulk of it is commercial, and the ground up, it varies. We tend to work on a lot of high rises, and they're just there.
Yeah, sure.
And work and then redoing maybe 2 to 3 floors in a high rise, or we do get the opportunity to work on some ground up buildings, and sometimes we partner and sometimes we're the primary architect. It really just varies.
Yeah, awesome. So, talking about the commercial type buildings and when it is an existing structure, so those are the times that we see those new technologies used most. Currently, what's the process look like? Again, this is kind of just for us in general and other people listening. Currently, when you come into a project that is an existing building and if you don't use laser scanning, what does your process typically look like if, there's not existing good documentation, or if you're designing in 3D and you don't have a as-built, model to start with? What does the process look like? And maybe we could talk about what some of the challenges that might arise.
Well, usually what happens is we go there and physically measure. So we're out there on site. Usually, depending on the size of property, it could take a couple days to really measure everything. We hope that the city has some kind of documentation of the building, even if it's 30 to 40 to 50 years ago, and we try to use that as a foundation. But if not, and this happens a lot of buildings, especially older buildings, they have built things out and maybe there is no record of that. And so we're actually in a situation right now where we're physically on the ground spending days measuring, and then we go back and we put that information either into AutoCAD or Revit, and we verify, draw it up, and then we go back a second time and we have to measure and re-verify. So that is the struggle with not having existing drawings and doing it what we call the old-fashioned way, because you don't necessarily know what's between two walls. So when you measure, sometimes a wall is thicker, and you're trying to go back and determine, where the walls are thicker or thinner, how this exterior is built. But what we still don't know is a lot of the structural that goes along with the building. So if we were ever to renovate the exterior, then we would actually need to bring in some kind of scanner and figure out more details about footings and things structurally to know if we can modify it and how to modify it. So it's time consuming. It's a lot more consuming than the new technology that's available, but it is one way of getting by with some of these buildings.
Yeah. And that's what we see very often is there's so many new technologies out there, but so many people haven't or can't, or, one way or another, they aren't fully adopting yet. And part of our goal with even this podcast is like, hear live discussion, like asking, what do you do now? And then us talking about scanning and talking about, how big of a space is it that you guys are out measuring right now? And you're mentioning having to go back a couple days and then model and then go back and verify, versus like, laser scanning, you can go in and capture, and I'll throw a random number out, 20,000 square feet in a single day, and bring that data back, and you would have all door locations, all window locations, all wall layouts, all lighting, pretty much everything from the site in a single day. And, there's two options. There's a lot of companies when they look at this new technology, they talk about purchasing it and doing it internally. And then there's a lot of service providers out there that can come, provide the service for one day and just hand the data over for, the architect engineer to utilize. And I know you mentioned you've seen the technology in the past. Have you guys, since, starting your own company over the last couple years, have you guys actually seen or utilized, laser scanning on any projects?
We haven't, but we have looked into it or partnered with other vendors, like you mentioned, subcontractors that do provide that service for other companies. But we have looked into it, and there are a lot of options. And the hard part is there's new, products out there, and you're trying to figure out which one do you want to invest in. We did actually purchase one, and it didn't do well. So maybe we need to just take a step back and wait. And that was probably a little bit before everything happened with COVID. And so we thought, okay, well, when everything starts to get back to normal, maybe we will look into it, because it is very common to not have existing drawings for buildings. Run into it, I would say 70 to 80% of the time. So
and we see that across all industries, which is, my original focus starting our company, Nexus 3D Consulting, was specifically taking laser scanning because we had found so many ways to apply it to projects, and just taking it as a service to help document existing buildings. Because whether it's an oil and gas facility, a chemical plant, a office space, a home, there's not good existing documentation. We're working on government projects that you would think, they're going to have everything nice and lined out, and it's the opposite. There's tons of old hand drawings with notes or drawings missing, and you get into a complex job where you're expanding and you want to prefabricate steel and you want to route pipe through things. It's like, we have found that really scanning is the only way to get as much detail as some projects really need. And it brings in multiple benefits on top of, reduced time on site and increased accuracy. People are using it for safety training and for planning and for marketing material. Like, instead of just going out to the site and taking a few individual measurements, you get all this data that comes back that you can use with panoramic images and just so many pieces of information. But I think, like you said, even there's so many products out there. There's, if you just try to Google laser scanners, you're going to find one that's $4,000, and you're going to find one that's $200,000, and one someone's walking around that's on a backpack, one that's on a handheld, one that's on a tripod. And if you don't really know the difference between all of them, then how do you know what to trust, what to use, what's going to be accurate enough? There's so many challenges through that process. And again, that's part of our goal here, is to help people, find out more information, hear from different service providers using different technologies, the pros and cons. So one, I'd like to say after this, I'd be happy to talk to you further about that and make some recommendations to you guys.
That would be great.
What about, let's talk about some other things. So as far as scanning goes, it's not currently something you use. What about, like, typical panoramic images for, site documentation. Do you utilize that at all?
We do. So I have a professional camera, and then we have other team members that have different camera equipment. So we've used all kinds of drones. We've used pretty much everything. We also partner with contractors, and a lot of times they'll have the technology that we need to really understand site, the building. And so the technology with that and video, especially, becoming more and more common for our projects, for sure.
Awesome. And are you guys, as far as your design work goes, are you working in Revit or CAD?
So it depends on the project. The larger the commercial projects, we do prefer Revit. The smaller the project, sometimes it's simpler in CAD. It also depends on if there are existing drawings and how quickly the turnaround is going to be, and if we're going to do 3D rendering. So there's a lot of steps to the decision making. The smaller the project, and I guess the available information determines if we use AutoCAD. And right now we use AutoCAD more than Revit, but Revit is still something that we utilize. It's really important for ground up projects, but for interior remodels, it's not as essential if it's small enough. But a ground up project, I wouldn't use anything but Revit, to be honest, because when you're coordinating with the contractor and everyone's designing, it's really efficient to have all the trades on one platform, able to visually see in 3D where the mechanical's running, where those sprinklers are laying in, and you really get to see that, which you can't do in AutoCAD.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more efficient.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, the BIM process of integrating all the different trades, being able to run clash detection and make those changes and avoid delays in construction, I think is a huge, it's already adopted, but I think it's becoming more and more and more common or necessary especially when you get into complex projects. What about virtual reality? Is that something you guys have used or? Nope.
I have in the past on large ground up high-rise projects where you're really trying to give your client an understanding of how they walk through the building, but I haven't on anything that we have. And again, it's more of a cost thing. Really just building up the company to a point where we can afford it, because it was very useful when we did have it, but I think we're still a little too small
to
find this for it. But it is a goal that I would love to have that eventually. It is very, especially again for ground up projects. I think interiors, they're small enough, you can show 3D renderings and give someone a basic understanding. But when you're doing a high rise, you really need the ability to show someone what that path is through the building.
Yeah. Are there any other technologies outside of those that you're kind of using, or anything new that you've kind of seen or adopted in the last few years?
Not anything new. I mean, for rendering, we're still using 3D Max in conjunction with AutoCAD or Revit. We're using SketchUp when necessary, V-Ray to help render. So a lot of the same platforms. But I think the only difference now is we're doing more video documentation that we've never really done before. So one of the things that I've never experienced at a company is a YouTube channel or, Facebook Live. And we're really taking this more high-tech video equipment and we're walking our clients through the process a little differently, explaining things a little bit better or documenting the project overall. But a lot of it is to do tutorials for people so that they can understand the process as well. So that's something that's completely new. And so we're actually getting more into the video technology and all of podcasts, which is funny when we talk about that, but we're starting to get into that type of technology to really expand our resources.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily something we want people to subscribe to. It's just something that we want to spread information on, especially when we're trying to help service like nonprofits and companies like that. We really want them to understand, things to look for and what the process looks like, and how do you know when you need an architect, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So the video really the new element for us, I believe.
That's awesome. What, this is kind of coming back to your company. What's the meaning behind your company name?
Well, Joshua 1:9 is a Bible verse. And when I started the company, for me, it's my faith. I'm a Christian. When I started the company, I had been with a lot of companies where I felt like I was just a number and it was all about the person ahead of me. And I wanted to start a company that had nothing to do with my name. And it was really just about our passion and our mission. And so when I was looking for a company name, I had been reading that particular verse because it's very scary to start an architecture firm, especially being a female and a minority, among other things. And so that verse was really what gave me the strength and the courage. And that's what the meaning of the verse is. It's being strong and courageous. And so I thought, well, why not choose those numbers because they have a significant meaning. And then in that process, I really was talking to my team because I already had a team of people that wanted to take that leap with me. And they couldn't have agreed more that that should be the title, even though we all share different faiths. They really thought that was good because I didn't want it to be about my last name.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. What were some of the hurdles when you were ready to start your company that let you make that final step?
Well, it's interesting because you have to either take out a loan typically or have some kind of money or some saved up to take that leap. But you also have to have some kind of commitment from clients that you've either worked with or that you might be working with. And I was actually really hesitant, but I had saved up money, and my clients are the ones that really pushed me. When I had went to the smaller company, a lot of them were basically saying, why don't you just start your own? And I explained, well, I really need a guarantee that I'm going to have a certain amount of projects to pay people because I'm not starting a small company. I'm starting a commercial architecture firm. You can't do that by yourself. It's physically impossible. And so I had 3 very large companies commit to coming with me. And so those companies really are the reason why I was able to start. They came with me. They took that leap with me. They trusted that even though I was starting from scratch, I would still be able to give them the same care and attention to their project that I did when I was with the other 2 companies. And so that really allowed me to take the leap of faith, as well as the team also saying that they trust me and that they'll be there to support me no matter how this goes. Because there's a lot of fear of, am I going to be able to pay them right away? And luckily I was able to pay them immediately because I'd saved up money and I didn't take out any loans. I don't have any debt right now as a corporation. I really didn't want to do this the wrong way and get into debt and continue to go down that road. I wanted to make sure that I was doing this the right way, but I was also taking care of them because that was the main goal, is for them to be taken care of and have a different life quality balance that they didn't have before. That's really what allowed me to, is really them being so supportive as a team. And then my clients really continuing to want to work with me after years of working with them in the industry. So
that's awesome.
It was
Yeah, it's starting a business is quite the adventure, and it's not meant for everybody. But but if for people that have that reason, they have either something that they want to do, they're unable to do at a company, they have clients, they're managing or doing all the work. It is rewarding if you can make that leap and get past the fear side and have a plan. So it's awesome to see that you're doing well and growing.
Thank you. It is a blessing.
Yes, very much so. How have you guys done through the exciting times we're all in? Have you guys managed to stay cohesive and collaborate virtually, or what have things looked like for you guys?
Well, thankfully, my team has already was already mobile. So they were already used to working from job sites or their home or our office. So that part went pretty seamlessly. The problem that we faced was, like everyone else, if projects go on hold, how do you compensate?
Yeah.
And thankfully, this entire process, we have been able to stay busy and stay consistent and continue to pay our team without skipping a beat. We've had to make choices into paying our senior leadership team, but my husband joined forces. So, whether we pay him or myself, it didn't really matter as long as I could pay the team, which has really been our goal. So we've experienced that, maybe a pay period or two, but we've at least had enough work to keep our team busy and paid. And that's really been the blessing. And a lot of that is still just the clients that I've had over the years, knowing that I just started out and wanting to keep us busy. And another aspect that I wasn't expecting is we have done residential since I started. It's kind of been the steady income or the steady project really that I can rely on. And that has grown maybe because people are at home and they're really wanting to do the remodel now that they're at home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the residential along with the commercial coming in has really allowed us to stay afloat. And again, luckily we were already used to working remote. So that's
awesome.
That was pretty seamless. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, is there anything going on with you guys that anything else you'd like to share? Anything, are you guys have capacity looking for new jobs? Is there a certain, even talking about the industry you guys are working in, are there any project types that, you would say are your specialty or you pursue?
I think overall we're definitely available. We are able to take on more projects at the time. Commercial interiors, corporate offices is the thing that I'm most experienced in personally, but our team overall has so much experience with ground up retail, residential, that it really allows us to take on anything. But personally, I've probably completed at least 13 million square feet worth of commercial interiors. And so I usually call that my bread and butter,
Mm-hmm.
where I know I can handle somebody's commercial office from start to finish without blinking. It's just something that I'm so used to. And it's really been what I've focused on the last 16 years or 15 years of my career. But overall, we really like to do a little bit of everything. And that's mostly to keep aware of all the different developments in each field. So technology is huge across the board, but I know that if we don't touch on every, hospitality or retail, then we'll kind of lose that education that we need. So we try to keep a little bit of everything overall.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if you have any other topics you'd like to touch on specifically, but I think we hit most of the ones that I was interested in.
Yeah, I think that's, I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. And like I mentioned as well earlier, I will be happy to follow up with you and share some more about laser scanning. We actually have an office down in California as well. So we'll offer to come down and do a scan for you for free so you guys can play with the data or something.
That would be great. We would love that. That would be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. And we look forward to sharing this and spreading some more information. And we'll point people back to you guys. And good luck with your nonprofit. We'll see if there's a way we can be involved there as well.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share about that with you as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Reality Capture Network, bringing the future to you.